beautiful moment of her life. But Todd wasn't there. Simone's hands trembled as she read the message on her phone screen. Can't do this. Sorry. Taking the honeymoon trip with Bethany instead. You deserve better than me anyway. The words blurred as tears filled her brown eyes. Bethany. Her own maid of honor who had mysteriously disappeared an hour before the ceremony. The officiant, Reverend Johnson, cleared his throat gently. Is everything all right, dear? Simone looked up at the expectant faces in the congregation. Her mother Grace sat in the front row, her face shifting from confusion to concern. Todd's parents were nowhere to be seen. The realization hit her like cold water. They had known. Everyone in Todd's family had known he wouldn't show up, and they had simply stayed home. Ladies and gentlemen, Simone's voice cracked as she spoke into the microphone. I'm afraid there won't be a wedding today. Todd has decided not to go through with the ceremony. Gasps echoed through the church. Some guests pulled out their phones to take pictures of her humiliation. Others whispered loudly about what a scandal this would become in their small town. Simone felt her legs wobble beneath her as the full weight of public embarrassment crashed down on her. That's when she noticed him. A man in an elegant navy suit sat alone in the back pew. He had kind blue eyes and neatly styled brown hair. Unlike everyone else, he wasn't gawking or whispering. Instead, he was watching her with genuine concern, as if he wanted to help but wasn't sure how. Simone gathered the long train of her dress and began the longest walk of her life down the aisle toward the church doors. Each step felt heavier than the last. The guests' stares burned into her back. Someone's child started crying, adding to the chaos of voices and camera clicks. The stranger in the navy suit stood up as she approached his row. Excuse me, he said quietly, stepping into the aisle. I know this is probably the worst day of your life, but I have a car outside. Would you like me to drive you somewhere away from all this? Simone paused, looking into his honest face. Something about his voice was steady and calming. I don't even know you. My name is Jonathan Pierce. I was invited as someone's plus one, but right now I think you need a friend more than anything else. He gestured toward the doors where she could see some guests already heading out, probably to spread the gossip around town. I promise I'm just offering to help you get away from here with some dignity. Simone felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. This stranger was offering her exactly what she needed most, an escape from the nightmare her wedding day had become. Thank you, she said, accepting his offer. I would really appreciate that. Jonathan gently took her arm to steady her as they walked toward the exit together. She noticed he positioned himself slightly behind her, creating a barrier between her and the curious stares of the remaining guests. When they reached the doors, he held them open and guided her toward a modest black sedan parked across the street. I'm sorry this happened to you, Jonathan said as he opened the passenger door for her. No one deserves to be treated like that, especially not on what should have been the happiest day of your life. Simone carefully arranged her dress in the car seat, grateful for his thoughtfulness. I should have seen it coming. Todd had been acting strange for weeks, but I thought it was just pre-wedding nerves. Jonathan started the car and pulled away from the church. In the rearview mirror, Simone could see some of the guests standing on the church steps, their phones still pointing in their direction. She turned away and focused on the road ahead. Where would you like me to take you? Jonathan asked. Home? Or somewhere else where you can have some space to think? Not home, Simone said quickly. My mother will be devastated, and I need a few minutes to figure out what to say to her. Is there maybe a quiet coffee shop or something where I could sit for a while? I know just the place, Jonathan replied, turning onto a tree-lined street. It's peaceful and the owner is very discreet. You won't have to worry about anyone bothering you there. As they drove through the town, Simone felt her breathing slowly return to normal. The kindness of this stranger was like a lifeline in her moment of complete despair. She had accepted his help without hesitation because something deep inside told her she could trust him. Have you ever experienced a moment when a stranger's kindness saved you from complete despair? Stories like Simone's remind us how powerful compassion can be. If this story touches your heart, please subscribe and share your own experiences of unexpected kindness in the comments below. Jonathan parked outside a small cafe called Peaceful Mornings on the quiet side of town. The building was painted soft yellow with white trim, and flower boxes lined the windows. It looked like the kind of place where people came to heal rather than to see and be seen. This is perfect, Simone said as they walked toward the entrance. The owner, an elderly woman with silver hair, greeted Jonathan warmly and immediately understood the situation without any explanation needed. Right this way, dear, she said to Simone, leading them to a corner booth away from the windows. I'll bring you some chamomile tea. It's good for calming the nerves. Simone settled into the cushioned seat, finally feeling safe from prying eyes. Jonathan sat across from her, giving her space while still being present. "Thank you for this," she said. "I can't believe how kind you're being to someone you just met." "Sometimes we all need help from unexpected places," Jonathan replied. "I've been in situations where I felt completely alone, so I understand how important it is to have someone care, even if they're a stranger." The tea arrived, along with warm blueberry muffins that Simone hadn't ordered. When she looked questioningly at the owner, the woman just smiled and patted her shoulder gently before walking away. "She's very intuitive," Jonathan explained. "This place has helped a lot of people through difficult times." Simone wrapped her hands around the warm mug, letting the heat seep into her fingers. "I keep thinking about all the money that's been wasted. The reception hall, the catering, the flowers. My mother's saved for 2 years to help pay for this wedding." Jonathan listened carefully, his expression growing more serious. "What if I told you that money didn't have to be completely wasted?" "What do you mean?" "Well, the reception is already paid for, right? The food, the music, the decorations." When Simone nodded, Jonathan continued. "What if we turned it into a celebration for your mother and all the people who came to support you today? Instead of a wedding reception, it could be a thank you party for everyone who cares about you." Simone's eyes widened. "That's actually a beautiful idea, but I couldn't ask you to help with something like that. You've already done so much." "You're not asking. I'm offering," Jonathan said gently. "I have some experience with event planning, and I think it would be a wonderful way to turn this day around. Your mother and friends deserve to see you celebrating your strength instead of hiding from embarrassment." The genuine warmth in his voice made Simone's heart feel lighter. She found herself accepting his offer with growing excitement. "You're right. They do deserve better than watching me fall apart. If you really think we could pull this off, I would be incredibly grateful for your help." Jonathan smiled, and Simone noticed how his whole face lit up when he was happy. "I'll make some phone calls while you finish your tea. We can have the reception venue transformed into something completely new within a couple of hours." While Jonathan stepped outside to make his calls, Simone called her mother to explain the plan. Grace Washington had been worried sick, but when she heard about the celebration idea, her voice filled with pride. "That's my daughter," Grace said. "Always thinking about others even when her own heart is breaking. This Jonathan person sounds like an angel sent just when you needed him most." When Jonathan returned, his face was bright with good news. "Everything is arranged. The venue coordinator was happy to help once I explained the situation. They're changing the decorations from wedding themes to celebration themes. The DJ will play uplifting music instead of romantic songs, and the caterer is adjusting the menu to be more like a community feast." "How much is this going to cost?" Simone asked, though she was already overwhelmed by his generosity. "Don't worry about that," Jonathan said, waving away her concern. "I have connections in the event industry, and everyone was excited to help make something positive out of a difficult situation. Sometimes the universe provides exactly what we need when we need it most." Simone felt tears of gratitude rather than sadness for the first time that day. "I don't know how to thank you enough. You've taken the worst day of my life and somehow found a way to make it meaningful." "You don't need to thank me," Jonathan said. "Helping you has reminded me how good it feels to use resources for something that really matters. I've been feeling pretty disconnected from people lately, and today has shown me what I've been missing." They spent the next hour planning details for the celebration. Jonathan had a natural talent for organization and seemed to think of everything Simone might need. He offered to arrange transportation for elderly guests, to coordinate with the photographer to capture happy moments instead of awkward ones, and even to have someone professionally clean and preserve her wedding dress so she could decide later what to do with it. "You seem to know a lot about event planning," Simone observed as they walked back to his car. "Is that what you do for work?" Jonathan hesitated for just a moment. "I work in business management. Part of my job involves coordinating large events and making sure everything runs smoothly. It's taught me that most problems have solutions if you approach them creatively." As they drove toward the reception venue, Simone found herself studying Jonathan's profile. He had a quiet confidence that made her feel secure, and his genuine interest in her well-being was unlike anything she had experienced before. Todd had always made her feel like she needed to earn his attention, but Jonathan simply gave his freely. "Can I ask you something?" Simone said as they pulled into the venue parking lot. "Of course. Why are you doing all this for someone you just met?" "Most people would have offered to drive me home and considered their good deed done for the day." Jonathan turned off the engine and looked at her thoughtfully. "I guess because I know what it feels like to be surrounded by people but still feel completely alone." Today, when I saw you standing at that altar, I recognized something in your face that I've seen in my own mirror. I wanted to make sure you knew that someone cared about what happened to you. His honesty touched something deep in Simone's heart. Well, your kindness has meant everything to me today. I hope someday I can return the favor and help you feel less alone too. I think you already have, Jonathan said softly. 3 weeks after the celebration that had turned her worst day into something meaningful, Simone was sitting in her small apartment sorting through bills when Jonathan called. The transformed reception had been beautiful, with all her friends and family dancing and laughing until late into the evening. Her mother had cried happy tears, and even some of Todd's relatives who had shown up apologized for his behavior and stayed to celebrate her strength. "Hi, Jonathan," she answered, genuinely happy to hear his voice. They had talked several times since that day, and she had come to value his friendship deeply. "Hi, Simone. I hope I'm not bothering you, but I have something I'd like to discuss with you. Do you have a few minutes?" "Of course. What's on your mind?" "Well, I know you mentioned that you're a kindergarten teacher, and I also know that losing your job because of all the wedding drama has put you in a difficult financial position." Simone had confided in him about how Todd's public humiliation of her had made her position at the small private school uncomfortable, leading to her resignation. "I'm managing," Simone said, though they both knew that wasn't entirely true. "I work for a company that has an education outreach program," Jonathan continued. "We develop learning resources for underprivileged children and coordinate with schools to provide better educational opportunities. I think your background in early childhood education would make you perfect for this type of work." Simone felt a flutter of excitement. "That sounds amazing. What kind of position are you thinking about?" "Program coordinator. You would design educational activities, work with schools in low-income areas, and help develop curriculum that makes learning more engaging for kids who might not have access to quality educational resources otherwise." "Jonathan, that sounds like a dream job for me. Are you sure they would consider someone with my limited experience?" "I'm positive," Jonathan said confidently. "I've already spoken with the hiring team about you. They're impressed by your educational background and your passion for helping children. The position comes with a competitive salary and full benefits. Would you be interested in interviewing for it?" Simone felt overwhelmed by his continued generosity. "Yes, absolutely. I would be incredibly grateful for this opportunity. When can I meet with them?" "How about tomorrow morning? I can pick you up and drive you to the office for the interview." "I accept with all my heart," Simone said. "Jonathan, I don't know what I did to deserve having you come into my life at exactly the right moment, but I'm so thankful." The next morning Jonathan arrived, punctually to drive her to the interview. Simone had spent the previous evening researching education outreach programs and preparing thoughtful answers to potential questions. She wore her best professional outfit, a navy blue dress with a matching blazer that made her feel confident and capable. "You look perfect," Jonathan said as she got into his car. "Remember, they're already interested in hiring you. This interview is really just a formality to make sure you're comfortable with the position." The office building was modern and impressive, with glass walls and beautiful landscaping. Jonathan led her through the lobby to a bank of elevators, using a key card to access the upper floors. "You must have high-level security clearance," Simone observed. "The company takes its privacy seriously," Jonathan replied, which seemed like a reasonable explanation. The interview went wonderfully. The education team was warm and enthusiastic about Simone's ideas for making learning more accessible to disadvantaged children. They offered her the position on the spot, along with a salary that was significantly higher than what she had earned as a kindergarten teacher. "We're excited to have you start next Monday," said Dr. Patricia Coleman, the department head. "Jonathan has told us so much about your passion for education, and we think you'll be a perfect fit for our mission." "I'm honored to accept this position," Simone said, shaking hands with everyone on the team. "Thank you for giving me this opportunity." As they left the building, Simone turned to Jonathan with tears of joy in her eyes. "I can't believe how perfectly everything worked out. This job is exactly what I've always wanted to do but never thought I'd have the chance to pursue." "Sometimes when one door closes, a better one opens," Jonathan said. "I have a feeling you're going to do incredible things in this position." "I hope so. I want to make sure I live up to your recommendation." Over the following weeks, Simone threw herself into her new role with enthusiasm. She developed creative learning programs that combined traditional academics with hands-on activities. Her first project involved working with 5 schools in underprivileged neighborhoods to create reading corners with comfortable seating and engaging books. What she didn't realize was that Jonathan often watched her presentations from the back of meeting rooms, smiling as he saw her natural leadership abilities shine. He had given her the opportunity, but her success was entirely her own achievement. "You're really flourishing here," Jonathan said one evening as they had coffee after a particularly successful school visit. "The teachers keep telling me how much the kids love your programs. It feels incredible to be doing work that actually makes a difference," Simone replied. "And the best part is I keep getting more resources approved for new projects. Whoever runs this company really understands the importance of education." Jonathan smiled mysteriously. "I'm sure they do. Have you ever met the CEO?" Simone asked. "I'd love to thank them personally for creating these opportunities for children." "Maybe someday," Jonathan said. "Right now, I think what matters most is that you're able to do the work you love." Simone reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "You've changed my life in ways I never could have imagined. I was so lost after what happened with Todd, and you've helped me find a path that's better than anything I had planned before." "You've changed my life too," Jonathan said quietly. "Watching you help those children has reminded me why the work we do here matters so much." As they walked to his car, Simone felt a deep sense of contentment. She had a job she loved, a growing friendship with someone who genuinely cared about her well-being, and hope for a future that felt bright and full of possibility. "Jonathan," she said as he started the engine, "I want you to know that accepting your help has been one of the best decisions I've ever made." "I'm glad," he replied, his voice warm with affection. "I have a feeling this is just the beginning of wonderful things for you." 2 months into her new position, Simone had become one of the most respected members of the education outreach team. Her innovative programs had increased reading scores in 3 schools by over 20%, and she had successfully secured funding for computer labs in 2 more schools. What made her happiest, though, was her growing friendship with Jonathan. They had started meeting for coffee every Friday evening to discuss her work week, but their conversations had gradually expanded to include books they were reading, movies they enjoyed, and their dreams for the future. Simone found Jonathan to be one of the most thoughtful listeners she had ever met, and his insights often helped her solve problems she hadn't even realized she was facing. "I've been thinking about our conversation last week," Jonathan said as they sat in their usual corner booth at Peaceful Mornings. "You mentioned that you're having trouble finding an apartment you can afford that's also close to the schools you work with." "It's not a huge problem," Simone said, though she had been feeling stressed about her current living situation. Her temporary apartment was expensive and far from most of her work sites. "I'll figure something out." "What if I told you I know about a perfect place that just became available?" Jonathan asked. "It's a 2-bedroom apartment in a safe neighborhood, close to public transportation, and the rent is very reasonable." "That sounds too good to be true," Simone said. "What's the catch?" "No catch. The owner is someone I know through work, and he's more interested in finding a good tenant than maximizing profit. He specifically wants to rent to someone who works in education or community service." Simone felt her excitement growing. "Would you be willing to introduce me to him? I would be so grateful for the opportunity to at least look at the place." "Of course," Jonathan said. "I can arrange for you to see it this weekend if you're interested." "I accept your offer to help with this," Simone said warmly. "You've been such a good friend to me, Jonathan. I don't know how I can ever repay all the kindness you've shown." "Friendship isn't about keeping score," Jonathan replied. "You've brought so much joy into my life just by being yourself. That's worth more than any favor I could do for you." Saturday morning, Jonathan picked Simone up to drive her to see the apartment. The neighborhood was lovely, with tree-lined streets and small local businesses. The building itself was well maintained, with a small garden in the front and large windows that let in plenty of natural light. "This is beautiful," Simone said as they walked up the front steps. "Are you sure the rent is really affordable?" "I'm sure," Jonathan said, using a key to open the front door. "The owner is more concerned with having responsible tenants who will take care of the place." The apartment exceeded all of Simone's expectations. It had hardwood floors, a modern kitchen, and a second bedroom that would be perfect for a home office where she could work on her educational materials. The rent was almost half what she had been paying for her temporary place. "I love it," Simone said, looking out the bedroom window at the small garden below. "When can I meet the owner to discuss the lease?" "Actually," Jonathan said, pulling some papers from his jacket pocket, "he's prepared the lease already. He told me that anyone you recommended would be welcome here." Simone read through the lease agreement carefully. Everything was standard and fair, with no hidden fees or unusual requirements. "This is incredible, Jonathan. I accept this offer with complete gratitude. Your friend is very generous to offer such reasonable rent. He believes in helping good people succeed, Jonathan said. He's especially supportive of educators and people who work with children. They spent the rest of the morning measuring rooms and planning how Simone would arrange her furniture. Jonathan offered to help her move, which she accepted happily. She had learned to receive his offers of help with grace, understanding that his generosity came from genuine care rather than any expectation of something in return. I've been thinking, Jonathan said as they sat on the apartment floor sharing sandwiches for lunch. You mentioned wanting to visit the art museum but never having time. Would you like to go together next weekend? I would love that, Simone said. I haven't been to a museum in years. It sounds like the perfect way to spend a Saturday. Great. There's a special exhibition on children's book illustrations that I thought you might enjoy, given your work in education. Their museum visit the following Saturday turned into one of the most enjoyable days Simone had experienced in months. Jonathan was knowledgeable about art history, and he shared interesting stories about various pieces without ever sounding pretentious. They spent hours wandering through different galleries, discussing their favorite works and discovering shared interests they hadn't known they had. Look at this, Simone said, stopping in front of a painting of children reading under a large oak tree. This is exactly what I want to create in the school gardens. Outdoor reading spaces where kids can connect with nature while they learn. That's a wonderful idea, Jonathan said. Have you thought about proposing it as a new program? I wouldn't know how to get funding for something like that, Simone admitted. What if I helped you put together a proposal? Jonathan offered. I have experience with grant writing and project funding. We could research similar programs and put together a compelling case for why outdoor education spaces would benefit the children. Simone turned to face him, her eyes bright with excitement. You would really help me with something like that? Absolutely. I think your vision for combining education with nature could make a real difference for these kids. Then I accept your offer with enthusiasm, Simone said. Working with you on this project sounds like it could be amazing. As they walked through the museum's sculpture garden, Simone found herself noticing how comfortable she felt with Jonathan. Their conversations flowed naturally, and he had a way of encouraging her ideas that made her feel more confident and creative than she had in years. Thank you for bringing me here today, she said as they sat on a bench surrounded by flowering trees. This has been exactly what I needed. Thank you for coming with me, Jonathan replied. I haven't enjoyed a museum visit this much in a long time. You see things in ways that make me appreciate art differently. I hope we can do more things like this together, Simone said. I really value our friendship, Jonathan. You've helped me discover parts of myself I didn't even know existed. I feel the same way, Jonathan said softly. You've reminded me how important it is to connect with people who share your values and passions. As they drove home that evening, Simone felt a deep sense of contentment. Her new apartment would be ready for her to move into the following week. Her work was fulfilling and successful, and she had developed a friendship that brought joy and meaning to her life. For the first time since her wedding day disaster, she felt genuinely excited about her future. 3 months had passed since Simone started working at the Education Outreach Program, and she had never been happier with her professional life. Her outdoor learning proposal, developed with Jonathan's help, had been enthusiastically approved, and she was now managing the installation of garden classrooms at 6 different schools. Miss Washington, when will the butterfly garden be ready? Asked 5-year-old Amara during Simone's visit to Lincoln Elementary. I want to read my book to the butterflies. Very soon, sweetheart, Simone promised, her heart warming at the child's excitement. Next week, we'll plant all the flowers that butterflies love most. After her school visit, Simone met Jonathan at their usual coffee shop to update him on the project's progress. She had grown to treasure these weekly meetings, where she could share her successes and challenges with someone who truly understood her passion for education. The children are so excited about the gardens, she told Jonathan as they settled into their corner booth. But I'm running into a problem with funding for the additional supplies we need. What kind of supplies? Jonathan asked, leaning forward with interest. Books mainly. I want to create weather-resistant book collections for each outdoor classroom so children can read outside year-round. I also need funding for art supplies so kids can create nature journals and document what they learn in the gardens. Jonathan nodded thoughtfully. How much would all of that cost? About $15,000 total for all 6 schools, Simone said. I've been applying for grants, but the process is slow, and I'd love to have everything ready when the gardens are finished. What if I told you I knew someone who might be willing to fund the entire project? Jonathan asked. Simone's eyes widened. Seriously? Who? There's a benefactor I know through work who specifically supports educational initiatives. They prefer to remain anonymous, but they've been very impressed with your garden classroom concept. Jonathan, that would be incredible, Simone said, hardly able to believe such good fortune. I would accept that offer with complete gratitude. These children deserve to have access to quality books and art supplies. I'll arrange for the funding to be transferred this week, Jonathan said. The donor also wanted me to ask if you'd be interested in expanding the program to additional schools next year. Absolutely, Simone said without hesitation. I can already see how much these outdoor classrooms are going to mean to the children. If we could bring this program to more schools, we could help thousands of kids develop a love of learning. I'll let them know you're interested in expansion, Jonathan said with a smile that seemed particularly pleased about something. Later that week, Simone received notification that the funding had been approved and transferred. She immediately began ordering books and supplies, working with local vendors to ensure everything would be ready for the garden installations. I still can't believe how generous this anonymous donor is, Simone said to Jonathan as they watched children at Martin Luther King Elementary help plant sunflowers in their new outdoor classroom. Whoever they are, they're changing these kids' lives. I'm sure they feel the same way about the work you're doing, Jonathan replied, watching as a group of second graders carefully watered their newly planted seeds. Can I ask you something? Simone said as they walked through the garden space together. Of course. You always seem to know about these funding opportunities and generous benefactors. Do you work in philanthropy or grant management? I realize I don't know much about the specifics of your job. Jonathan paused near a bench where children would soon be able to sit and read under the shade of a maple tree. I work in various aspects of business development and community investment. Part of my role involves connecting worthwhile projects with people who have the resources to support them. That makes sense, Simone said. You're really good at it. These children are so lucky that you understand the importance of educational programs. The following month, Jonathan made another offer that took Simone by surprise. They were having dinner at a small restaurant near her new apartment when he brought up the subject of field trips. I've been thinking about your students, he said. Many of them have never been to places like science museums, art galleries, or historical sites, right? That's true, Simone confirmed. Most of these schools don't have funding for educational field trips. It's one of the things that makes me saddest about the inequality in education. What if we could arrange sponsored field trips for all the schools in your program? Jonathan asked. Transportation, admission fees, educational materials, everything included. Simone set down her fork, staring at him in amazement. Jonathan, do you understand how much that would cost? We're talking about hundreds of children across 6 schools. The same anonymous benefactor I mentioned before has specifically expressed interest in funding educational experiences outside the classroom, Jonathan explained. They believe that exposing children to museums, science centers, and cultural institutions is just as important as traditional classroom learning. I couldn't agree more, Simone said, her excitement building. Studies show that children who visit museums and cultural sites develop stronger critical thinking skills and broader worldviews. So you would accept this funding if it were offered? Without any hesitation, Simone said firmly. These children deserve to experience the wider world beyond their neighborhoods. I accept this generous offer with complete gratitude. Perfect. I'll arrange for the field trip funding to be set up through the education department. You can start planning trips for the spring semester. Over the next few weeks, Simone threw herself into planning educational field trips that would complement the outdoor classroom curriculum. She arranged visits to the Natural History Museum for children studying plant life cycles, trips to the Art Museum for students learning about color and creativity, and visits to the Science Center for kids exploring weather patterns. Miss Washington, said 8-year-old Jaden after their first museum visit, I never knew there were so many different kinds of butterflies in the whole world. I want to read every book about butterflies now. That's exactly what we hoped you'd say, Simone replied, her heart full of joy at his enthusiasm. That evening she called Jonathan to share the success of their first field trip. The children were absolutely amazed by everything they saw. Several of them have already asked their teachers if they can do research projects on what they learned today. That's wonderful, Jonathan said. The benefactor will be thrilled to hear how much the children are benefiting from these experiences. I wish I could thank them personally, Simone said. Whoever this person is, they're making dreams come true for children who might never have had these opportunities otherwise. I think knowing that the programs are successful is thanks enough for them, Jonathan replied. Some people prefer to help quietly without recognition. As Simone prepared for bed that night, she reflected on how dramatically her life had changed since that awful day at the church. What had started as the worst humiliation of her life had led to meaningful work, financial stability, and a friendship with someone who consistently encouraged her to dream bigger and reach higher. She had learned to accept generosity with grace, understanding that sometimes accepting help allowed others to experience the joy of making a positive difference. The anonymous benefactor, whoever they were, was clearly someone who understood that investing in education was investing in the future. "Thank you," she whispered into the darkness, hoping somehow her gratitude would reach the mysterious person who had made so many wonderful things possible. Spring arrived with an explosion of color in the garden classrooms, and Simone's program had become a model that other cities were interested in replicating. She had been invited to speak at education conferences and had even been featured in a magazine article about innovative outdoor learning environments. "I still can't believe all this success started with a conversation about wanting to create reading spaces under trees," Simone said to Jonathan as they walked through the Lincoln Elementary garden where children were reading quietly among the blooming flowers. "Good ideas have a way of growing when they're properly nurtured," Jonathan replied, watching a group of kindergartners share a picture book about bees while sitting on small wooden benches surrounded by lavender plants. "Speaking of growth," Simone said, "I have some exciting news. Dr. Coleman has asked me to present our program to the board of directors next month. If they approve it, we could expand to 20 more schools next year." "That's incredible, Simone. I'm sure they'll be impressed by everything you've accomplished." "I hope so. I've been working on the presentation for weeks, but I'm nervous about speaking to such high-level executives." "You'll be perfect," Jonathan assured her. "You have passion, data to support your programs, and real evidence of success. What more could they want?" That evening, Simone was home working on her presentation when her phone rang. The caller ID showed her mother's number. "Hi, Mom," she answered. "How are you?" "I'm fine, sweetheart, but I have some news that might upset you," Grace Washington said carefully. "Todd came by the house today." Simone felt her stomach drop. "What did he want?" "He said he's been trying to reach you for weeks. He wants to apologize and ask for another chance." "Mom, I hope you told him that's never going to happen." "Of course I did. But Simone, he seemed different. Desperate, almost. He kept saying he made the biggest mistake of his life and that he realizes now how much he loves you." Simone rubbed her temples, feeling a familiar stress headache beginning. "It's too late for apologies. I've moved on with my life, and I'm happier than I've ever been." "I told him that, but he said he's not giving up. He mentioned something about proving he's changed and making grand gestures to win you back." After hanging up with her mother, Simone felt unsettled. She had built a new life based on kindness, generosity, and meaningful work. The last thing she wanted was for Todd to disrupt the peace and happiness she had found. She decided to call Jonathan to talk through her concerns. His calm presence always helped her think more clearly. "I'm sorry he's bothering you," Jonathan said after she explained the situation. "How are you feeling about all this?" "Annoyed mostly. And a little worried that he might try to cause problems at work or in other areas of my life." "Would you like me to help you handle this situation?" Jonathan offered. "I have some experience dealing with people who won't accept no for an answer." Simone felt immediate relief at his offer. "What could you do?" "I could have my lawyer send him a formal letter explaining that any further contact with you or your family constitutes harassment. Sometimes people need official communication to understand that their behavior is unacceptable." "You would really do that for me?" Simone asked, touched by his willingness to protect her. "Of course. I care about your well-being and I don't want anyone causing you stress or anxiety." "Then I accept your offer gratefully," Simone said. "I want to focus on my work and my future, not waste energy dealing with someone from my past." "I'll take care of it tomorrow," Jonathan assured her. "Todd will receive clear legal notice that he needs to leave you alone." The next day at work, Simone was reviewing field trip reports when Dr. Coleman stopped by her office with a concerned expression. "Simone, I need to talk with you about something sensitive," she said, closing the office door behind her. "Is everything okay?" "A man came by this morning claiming to be your fiancé. He said there had been a misunderstanding about your relationship status and that he needed to speak with you urgently about personal matters." Simone felt her face flush with embarrassment. "Dr. Coleman, that man is my ex-fiancé. He left me at the altar several months ago, and now he's apparently trying to insert himself back into my life. I've had no contact with him since our wedding day." "I figured it was something like that," Dr. Coleman said kindly. He seemed agitated when I told him we couldn't give out information about our employees. I wanted you to know in case he tries to contact you here again. Thank you for protecting my privacy. I've already asked someone to send him a legal notice to stop contacting me. Good. If he shows up here again, we'll have security escort him off the property. That afternoon, Jonathan called to update her on the legal situation. My lawyer sent the letter this morning and Todd's response was immediate. He called the law office claiming that you're making a mistake and that he has important information about the people you're working with. What kind of information? Probably nothing truthful, Jonathan said. People like Todd often try to create drama when they're not getting the attention they want. My lawyer made it clear that any further contact would result in a restraining order. Thank you for handling this so quickly, Simone said. I feel much better knowing there are legal boundaries in place now. That evening, as Simone was preparing for bed, her doorbell rang. She looked through the peephole and saw an elderly woman with kind eyes and silver hair standing on her porch. Can I help you? Simone asked through the door. My dear, my name is Helen Pierce. I'm Jonathan's grandmother, and I was hoping we could have a quick conversation. Simone opened the door, curious about why Jonathan's grandmother would visit her unannounced. Helen was elegantly dressed and carried herself with the dignity of someone accustomed to respect. Please come in, Simone said. Can I offer you some tea? That would be lovely, thank you. As they sat in Simone's living room, Helen studied her with intelligent eyes. Jonathan has told me so much about you and your wonderful work with children. I wanted to meet the young woman who has brought such joy into my grandson's life. Jonathan has been an incredible friend to me, Simone said. I'm lucky to know him. He speaks about you constantly, Helen said with a knowing smile. Your passion for education, your kindness, your strength. I haven't seen him this happy in years. I'm glad our friendship has been positive for him. He's certainly been a blessing in my life. Helen leaned forward slightly. My dear, there's something I think you should know about Jonathan. Something he's been struggling with how to tell you. Simone felt a flutter of concern. Is he okay? Is something wrong? Nothing's wrong exactly. But Jonathan hasn't been entirely honest with you about who he is and what he does for work. What do you mean? Helen took a deep breath. Jonathan is the CEO of Pierce Industries. He owns the company where you work, and he's been the anonymous benefactor funding all your educational programs. Simone stared at her, feeling as if the ground had shifted beneath her feet. That's impossible. Jonathan works in business development. He's not wealthy. His car is modest, his clothes are normal. He's worth several $billion, my dear. But he's also one of the loneliest people I know. When he met you, he was desperate to be valued for who he is as a person rather than what he owns. So he kept his identity secret. He's been lying to me for months? Simone asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Not lying exactly. Everything he's told you about caring for you and believing in your work is completely true. He just hasn't told you the whole truth about his circumstances. Simone felt overwhelmed by this revelation. The anonymous benefactor who had changed her life was Jonathan himself. All his offers of help, all the funding for her programs, all the opportunities that had seemed too good to be true, they were coming from someone who had been deceiving her about his identity. Why are you telling me this? Simone asked. Because Jonathan is in love with you and he's terrified that when you learn the truth, you'll think he was manipulating you or trying to buy your affection. I wanted you to hear it from someone who knows his heart. Helen reached over and patted Simone's hand gently. He's a good man who's made some questionable choices about honesty. But his feelings for you are genuine, and his support for your work comes from genuine admiration for what you're accomplishing. After Helen left, Simone sat alone in her apartment, trying to process everything she had learned. Jonathan Pierce, Billionaire CEO. The man who had rescued her from the worst day of her life was one of the wealthiest people in the country, and he had been pretending to be an ordinary business employee. She thought about all their conversations, all the times he had seemed to know exactly how to help her, all the mysterious funding sources that had made her dreams possible. It all made sense now, but it also made her question everything she thought she knew about their relationship. Tomorrow she would have to face Jonathan knowing the truth about who he really was. Simone spent a sleepless night thinking about Helen's revelation. By morning, she had decided that she needed to hear Jonathan's explanation directly before making any judgments about his deception. When he called to arrange their usual Friday coffee meeting, she suggested they meet at her apartment instead. Is everything okay? Jonathan asked when he arrived, immediately sensing her serious mood. I think we need to talk, Simone said, gesturing for him to sit on her couch. Your grandmother visited me last night. Jonathan's face went pale. Helen came here? What did she tell you? She told me that you're Jonathan Pierce, CEO of Pierce Industries. She told me that you're worth billions of dollars and that you've been the anonymous benefactor funding all my educational programs. Jonathan closed his eyes and took a deep breath. When he opened them again, his expression was filled with regret and vulnerability. Simone, I'm so sorry. I wanted to tell you the truth so many times, but I was afraid of how you'd react. I don't know how I'm supposed to react, Simone said honestly. 4 months I've been accepting help from someone I thought was just a kind friend. Now I find out that same person is one of the most powerful men in the city and has been, playing games with me. It wasn't a game, Jonathan said urgently. Everything I told you about caring for you and believing in your work was completely true. I just couldn't figure out how to tell you about the money without changing everything between us. But you did change everything between us by not telling me, Simone pointed out. Every conversation we've had has been based on false information. Every time I've thanked you for your help, I was actually thanking my boss. Jonathan leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly together. When I met you that day at the church, you were this incredible woman who had just been abandoned and humiliated, but you still had the strength to stand up with dignity and grace. I wanted to help you because you deserved better than what had happened to you. But why the deception? Why not just tell me who you were from the beginning? Because I've learned that when people know about my wealth, they see dollar signs instead of seeing me, Jonathan explained. Every relationship becomes transactional. People agree with everything I say, laugh at jokes that aren't funny, and pretend to share interests they don't really have. I wanted to know what it felt like to be valued for myself, not my bank account. Simone studied his face, seeing genuine pain in his expression. So you decided to lie to me instead? I decided to let you get to know me without the complication of money influencing your feelings, Jonathan said. And it worked, didn't it? You became my friend because you liked who I am as a person, not because you wanted something from me. But I did want something from you, Simone said. I wanted honesty. I wanted to know that the person I was growing to care about was real, not playing a character. I am real, Jonathan insisted. Every moment we've spent together, every conversation we've had, every feeling I've shared with you has been completely authentic. The only thing I kept secret was the extent of my financial resources. Simone stood up and walked to her window, looking out at the garden where children from the nearby school were playing. All those funding opportunities you knew about, all those anonymous benefactors who supported exactly the projects I was passionate about. That was all you. Yes. And my job at Pierce Industries? I created the position specifically for you because I knew you'd be amazing at it. But everything you've accomplished since then has been your own success. I provided opportunities, but you've exceeded every expectation with your talent and dedication. Simone turned back to face him. Jonathan, do you understand how this makes me feel? Like everything good that's happened to me has been charity from someone who felt sorry for me. That's not true at all, Jonathan said, standing up to face her. Yes, I provided funding and opportunities, but you're the one who turned them into something meaningful. You're the one who designed innovative programs that actually help children learn. You're the one who works 18-hour days because you care so much about these kids. I may have opened doors, but you're the one who walked through them and made magic happen. But you should have told me, Simone said, her voice soft with hurt. I deserve to know who I was really dealing with. You're absolutely right, Jonathan admitted. I should have told you weeks ago when I realized I was falling in love with you. I kept waiting for the perfect moment, but there never seemed to be one. Simone felt her heart skip at his words. You're in love with me? Completely, Jonathan said without hesitation. You're the most genuine, compassionate, intelligent woman I've ever known. You've brought joy and purpose into my life in ways I never thought possible. That's why I was so scared to tell you the truth. I couldn't bear the thought of losing you. Simone sat back down, overwhelmed by the complexity of her emotions. She was hurt by his deception, but she could also understand his motivations. She had seen how people often treated wealthy individuals differently, and she could imagine how isolating that must be. I need you to understand something, she said carefully. I'm not angry about your wealth. I'm not even angry about your generosity. I'm hurt that you didn't trust me enough to be honest about who you are. I trust you completely, Jonathan said, sitting down across from her. It was myself I didn't trust. I was afraid that if you knew about my money, you'd start seeing me differently. I was afraid you'd accept my help because you felt obligated rather than because you wanted to. But that's exactly what happened anyway, Simone pointed out. I've been accepting help from my employer without knowing it. That changes the power dynamic of our entire relationship. Jonathan was quiet for a moment, considering her words. You're right. I handled this badly. I should have told you the truth after our first coffee together, when I realized how much I wanted you in my life. Why didn't you? Because I was selfish, he admitted. You looked at me like I was just a regular person who cared about you, and I hadn't experienced that in years. I wanted to hold on to that feeling for as long as possible. Simone felt tears welling up in her eyes. Jonathan, I did care about you. I still do. But now I don't know how to separate my feelings about you as a person from my gratitude for everything you've done to help me build this new life. What if I told you that everything I've given you has made me happier than any business deal or investment I've ever made? Jonathan asked. What if I told you that watching you help those children has reminded me why I wanted to start a foundation in the first place? You haven't just been receiving help, Simone. You've been giving me purpose and meaning. I need time to think about all this, Simone said. This changes everything I thought I knew about us, about my job, about my future. I understand, Jonathan said, standing up to leave. Take all the time you need. But please remember that regardless of money or job titles or any other complications, my feelings for you are real. You've become the most important person in my life. After he left, Simone sat in her quiet apartment thinking about everything that had happened. Jonathan's deception had hurt her, but she could also see that his motivations came from loneliness and fear rather than malice. The question now was whether she could trust him to be honest with her going forward. Her phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Jonathan. I've arranged for a complete financial separation between my personal relationship with you and your professional work. Whatever you decide about us, your job and programs are secure and independent. You've earned everything you've achieved. Simone smiled despite her confusion. Even now, even when she was angry with him, Jonathan was trying to protect her and ensure she felt secure. Maybe that said something important about who he really was. Have you ever discovered that someone you cared about was hiding a major part of their identity? Relationships built on partial truths can be complicated to navigate. If you're invested in Simone and Jonathan's story, please subscribe and share your thoughts about whether love can overcome deception when the intentions are good. After a week of careful consideration, Simone called Jonathan and asked him to meet her at the coffee shop where they had shared so many meaningful conversations. She had spent hours walking through the garden classrooms, talking with her mother, and reflecting on everything she knew about Jonathan's character. Thank you for agreeing to see me, Jonathan said as he sat down across from her. He looked tired as if he hadn't been sleeping well. I've been doing a lot of thinking, Simone said. About you, about us, about everything that's happened. And what have you concluded? I've concluded that you made a mistake by not telling me the truth earlier, but I also understand why you made that choice. Simone wrapped her hands around her coffee mug, gathering her thoughts. I've also realized that everything I fell in love with about you had nothing to do with your wealth. Jonathan's eyes lit up with hope. You fell in love with me? Yes, Simone said with a smile. I fell in love with your kindness, your intelligence, your genuine care for other people, and your ability to see possibilities where others see problems. Those qualities aren't related to how much money you have. So where does that leave us? Jonathan asked carefully. I think it leaves us with a choice, Simone replied. We can let your deception destroy what we've built together, or we can commit to complete honesty going forward and see what our relationship can become. I choose honesty, Jonathan said immediately. I choose building a future with you based on truth and trust. Then I choose to give us a real chance, Simone said. But I need you to promise me something. Anything. I need you to promise that from now on, you'll trust me enough to be completely honest about everything. No more secrets, no more protecting me from information you think might upset me. I promise, Jonathan said solemnly. No more secrets. Simone reached across the table and took his hand. Good. Because there's something I want to tell you too. What's that? I love you too, Jonathan Pierce. Not because you're wealthy, not because you've helped me, but because you're a good man who makes me want to be the best version of myself. Jonathan lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. I love you, Simone Washington. More than I ever thought it was possible to love someone. They spent the rest of the afternoon walking through the downtown area, talking about their hopes for the future and sharing stories they hadn't told each other before. Jonathan told her about his childhood, his relationship with his grandmother, and his struggles with loneliness despite being surrounded by people who wanted things from him. Simone shared her dreams for expanding educational opportunities and her fears about whether she was capable of handling such large-scale projects. There's something I want to ask you, Jonathan said as they paused on a bridge overlooking the river that ran through their city. What is it? Would you like to come to dinner with my grandmother this weekend? She's been wanting to get to know you better, and I think you'd really enjoy each other's company. I would love that, Simone said. I liked her when she visited me, even though I was overwhelmed by what she was telling me. She's going to adore you, Jonathan said. She's already told me several times that you're the best thing that's ever happened to me. Sunday evening, Jonathan picked Simone up for dinner at Helen's elegant but comfortable home. The older woman greeted them warmly and had prepared a meal of Simone's favorite foods, which Jonathan had apparently mentioned to her. I owe you an apology, my dear, Helen said as they sat down to eat. I probably should have encouraged Jonathan to tell you the truth instead of taking matters into my own hands. I'm glad you told me, Simone replied. I think I needed to hear it from someone other than Jonathan so I could process the information objectively. You're very wise, Helen said approvingly. And very forgiving. My grandson is lucky to have found someone with such a generous heart. After dinner, Helen showed Simone photo albums from Jonathan's childhood, sharing stories about his character and values that helped Simone understand him even better. He's always been someone who cares deeply about helping others, Helen explained, pointing to a picture of teenage Jonathan volunteering at a soup kitchen. Even when he was young, he understood that having advantages meant having responsibilities. That's one of the things I love most about him, Simone said. His generosity comes from genuine compassion, not from wanting recognition or control. Exactly, Helen said with satisfaction. I can see why he fell in love with you. You understand his heart. As they drove home that evening, Jonathan reached over and took Simone's hand. Thank you for being so wonderful with Helen. She hasn't been this happy in years. She's incredible, Simone said. I can see where you get your wisdom and kindness. There's something else I want to discuss with you, Jonathan said as they pulled into Simone's driveway. Something about your work. What about it? I want to offer you the position of Director of Educational Innovation for Pierce Industries. It would involve overseeing all our education-related philanthropy and developing new programs like the garden classrooms on a national scale. Simone turned to face him in surprise. Jonathan, that sounds like an incredible opportunity, but are you sure you want to mix our personal and professional relationships like that? I've thought about it extensively, Jonathan said. You're the most qualified person I know for this type of work, and your vision for education reform could benefit millions of children. This offer isn't about our relationship. It's about your extraordinary talents and the difference you could make. What about Dr. Coleman and the current education team? Dr. Coleman has been hoping to transition to a research role, and the rest of the team would work under your direction. You'd have complete autonomy to develop programs and allocate resources as you see fit. Simone considered the offer carefully. It would mean tremendous responsibility, but also the opportunity to help children on a scale she had never imagined possible. If I accept this position, I want to make sure there are clear professional boundaries, she said. When we're at work, you're my colleague, not my boyfriend. Agreed, Jonathan said with a smile. So does that mean you accept? I accept with excitement and gratitude, Simone said. And I promise to use this opportunity to create programs that will make a real difference in children's lives. Jonathan leaned over and kissed her softly. I can't wait to see what you accomplish. You're going to change the world, Simone. We're going to change the world, she corrected. Together. As she walked to her front door that night, Simone felt a sense of completeness she had never experienced before. She had found meaningful work, financial security, and most importantly, a partner who valued her for exactly who she was. The future stretched ahead of them, bright with possibilities and filled with love. 6 months into their relationship, Simone and Jonathan had found a perfect balance between their personal and professional lives. Simone had exceeded all expectations in her role as Director of Educational Innovation, launching garden classroom programs in 12 states and developing a teacher training curriculum that was being adopted by universities nationwide. The preliminary data from our pilot programs is incredible, Simone told the Pierce Industries Board of Directors during her quarterly presentation. Students in schools with garden classrooms are showing 30% improvement in science comprehension and 40% improvement in reading engagement. The board members nodded approvingly, asking thoughtful questions about expansion timelines and budget allocations. Jonathan sat at the far end of the conference table, maintaining the professional distance they had agreed upon while clearly being proud of her accomplishments. Miss Washington, said board member Patricia Chin, the foundation world is taking notice of your innovative approaches. We've received inquiries from 3 other major philanthropic organizations about collaboration opportunities. I'd be interested in exploring partnerships that could benefit more children, Simone replied. My goal is to make quality outdoor education accessible regardless of a family's economic situation. After the meeting, Jonathan waited until the conference room was empty before approaching Simone. You were brilliant in there, he said. I'm continually amazed by your vision and leadership. Thank you, but remember our agreement about keeping work and personal separate, Simone said with a playful smile. You can tell me how amazing I am when we get home. Speaking of home, Jonathan said, his expression becoming more serious, there's something I've been wanting to discuss with you. What is it? My lease is up next month and I've been thinking about looking for a new place. Something with more space for entertaining and maybe room for a home office where you could work on your program materials. Simone felt her heart speed up. Are you asking what I think you're asking? I'm asking if you'd like to look for a place together. Officially move in together and start building a shared life. Jonathan, I would love that, Simone said, accepting his offer with joy. I've been hoping you'd suggest it because I wasn't sure how to bring it up myself. Really? You've been thinking about it too. Every morning when you leave for your own apartment, I wish you were just going to another room instead, Simone admitted. I love spending time with you and I love the idea of waking up in the same place every day. They spent the following weekends looking at houses together, searching for something that would accommodate both their needs and reflect their shared values. They found the perfect place in a quiet neighborhood known for its excellent schools and strong sense of community. This is it, Simone said as they walked through a beautiful craftsman-style house with large windows, hardwood floors, and a spacious backyard perfect for gardening. I can picture us hosting dinner parties here, working on foundation projects in the study, and growing our own vegetables in that garden. I can picture all of that too, Jonathan said, pulling her close as they stood in what would become their kitchen. I can also picture Helen visiting us here for Sunday dinners and maybe someday having children who would love playing in that backyard. Children? Simone asked, looking up at him with surprise and delight. Is that something you think about? Having a family together? I think about it all the time, Simone said. I love working with children and I've always dreamed of having my own someday. I just wasn't sure if you wanted kids. I want everything with you, Jonathan said, kissing her forehead. A home, a family, a future where we can continue doing meaningful work together. Then let's make an offer on this house, Simone said. Let's start building that future. The house purchase went smoothly, and within 6 weeks they were moving their belongings into their shared home. Helen had insisted on hosting a housewarming party, inviting Simone's mother Grace, their work colleagues, and several friends from the community organizations they supported. Look at this beautiful home, Grace said as she toured the house with Helen. You can tell it's going to be filled with love and laughter. And probably quite a few children in the not-too-distant future, Helen added with a knowing smile. The housewarming party was a perfect reflection of Simone and Jonathan's values. Instead of expensive decorations or catered food, they had prepared simple homemade dishes and filled the house with flowers from their own garden. Guests included teachers from the schools where Simone worked, business partners of Jonathan's who shared their philanthropic interests, and neighbors who had welcomed them warmly to the community. I have an announcement to make, Jonathan said as everyone gathered in the living room after dinner. Simone has been working on something special, and I wanted to give her the opportunity to share it with all of you. Simone stood up, feeling nervous but excited about what she was about to reveal. Many of you know about our garden classroom program and how successful it's been in improving educational outcomes for children. What you might not know is that we've been quietly working on something much larger. She paused, looking around the room at all the supportive faces. We're launching the National Education Innovation Foundation, with a goal of bringing outdoor learning programs to over 10,000 schools within the next 5 years. We're also establishing teacher training centers, developing curriculum resources, and creating scholarship programs for students who want to pursue careers in education. The room erupted in applause and excited questions about the foundation's goals and timeline. How did you manage to organize something this comprehensive? Asked Dr. Coleman, who had been one of Simone's strongest supporters. It's been a team effort, Simone replied, looking at Jonathan with love and gratitude. I provided the educational vision, and Jonathan provided the business strategy and resources to make it sustainable. We've also partnered with universities, other foundations, and community organizations who share our commitment to educational equity. After the guests left, Simone and Jonathan sat on their back porch swing, enjoying the peaceful evening and reflecting on how much their lives had changed. A year ago, I was a kindergarten teacher who thought her biggest dream was having her own classroom, Simone said. Now I'm running a national foundation and living with the most wonderful man I've ever known. A year ago, I was a lonely billionaire who thought money was the answer to every problem, Jonathan replied. Now I know that love and meaningful work are the only things that really matter. We make a good team, Simone said, curling up against his side. The best team, Jonathan agreed. I love you, Simone Washington. I love you too, Jonathan Pierce. As they sat together watching fireflies dance in their garden, both Simone and Jonathan felt a deep sense of contentment and excitement about their future together. They had built something beautiful from the ashes of Simone's worst day, and they were just getting started. 1 year later, Simone stood in the same church where her life had been turned upside down by Todd's abandonment. But this time, everything was different. This time, she was surrounded by people who loved and supported her unconditionally. This time, the man waiting for her at the altar was someone who had proven his devotion through consistent kindness and unwavering commitment. Are you ready, sweetheart? Grace asked as she adjusted Simone's veil. The wedding dress was new, elegant but simple, reflecting Simone's natural grace and understated beauty. I've never been more ready for anything in my life, Simone replied, looking at herself in the mirror. Her reflection showed a woman who was confident, loved, and excited about her future. Helen appeared in the doorway of the bridal preparation room, tears of joy in her eyes. You look absolutely radiant, my dear. Jonathan is the luckiest man in the world. I think I'm the lucky one, Simone said, accepting the pearl bracelet Helen offered her. Something borrowed from the Pierce family, to welcome you officially into our hearts. I'm honored to wear it, Simone said, fastening the delicate bracelet around her wrist. As the wedding music began, Simone walked down the aisle with her mother beside her. The church was filled with friends, family, colleagues, and children from the schools where her programs had made a difference. Several of her former students had made her cards and pictures that decorated the altar area. Jonathan stood waiting for her, looking handsome in his black tuxedo but more importantly, looking at her with complete adoration and love. When their eyes met, Simone felt the same flutter of happiness she had experienced every day since they had committed to building a life together. Dearly beloved, Reverend Johnson began, we are gathered here today to witness the marriage of two people who have shown us all what it means to turn adversity into blessing, individual success into shared purpose, and personal love into service to others. The ceremony was intimate and meaningful, with vows that Simone and Jonathan had written themselves. They promised to support each other's dreams, to maintain honesty and trust in their relationship, and to use their resources and talents to help others find hope and opportunity. I, Jonathan, take you, Simone, to be my wife, Jonathan said, his voice steady and sure. I promise to love you not just in happiness but in challenges, to support your dreams as enthusiastically as my own, and to work beside you in making the world a better place for children everywhere. I, Simone, take you, Jonathan, to be my husband, Simone replied, tears of joy streaming down her face. I promise to love you for who you are, not what you have, to trust in your goodness even when I don't understand your choices, and to build a family with you based on kindness, generosity, and service to others. When Reverend Johnson pronounced them husband and wife, the church erupted in cheers and applause. Jonathan kissed Simone tenderly, and she felt as if her heart might burst from happiness. The reception was held in the same venue where they had celebrated Simone's strength a year earlier, but this time the decorations were pure celebration. Tables were filled with flowers from their own garden, and the centerpieces included small potted plants that guests could take home to start their own gardens. Ladies and gentlemen, Jonathan said during his speech, a year ago, Simone taught me that sometimes the worst thing that can happen to you leads to the best thing that can happen to you. Today, I'm marrying a woman who has shown me what true partnership looks like. And I'm marrying a man who proved that real love shows up in actions, not just words, Simone added. Together, we're going to continue working to make sure every child has access to quality education and outdoor learning experiences. Dr. Coleman stood up to make a toast. To Simone and Jonathan, who have shown us that when two people combine their individual strengths with shared values, they can accomplish incredible things. The National Education Innovation Foundation has already changed thousands of children's lives, and we can't wait to see what you accomplish together as a married couple. As the evening continued with dancing and celebration, Simone found herself surrounded by children from various schools who had participated in the garden classroom programs. They had made her a scrapbook filled with drawings, photos, and thank you notes. Miss Simone, said 8-year-old Maria, my teacher said you and Mr. Jonathan are going to help even more kids learn about plants and reading outside. That's right, Simone said, kneeling down to Maria's level. We want every child to have the chance to learn in beautiful outdoor spaces. Will you come visit our new garden when it's finished? I wouldn't miss it for the world, Simone promised. Later that evening, as Simone and Jonathan danced their first dance as husband and wife, they talked quietly about their hopes for the future. I have a confession, Jonathan said as they swayed to the soft music. What's that? I've already started setting aside funds for college scholarships for any children we might have someday. I want them to know that education is the most valuable gift we can give them. And I've been researching homeschool curricula that incorporate outdoor learning, Simone admitted. I want our children to grow up understanding that the whole world is their classroom. We're going to be great parents, Jonathan said confidently. Yes, we are, Simone agreed. But first, we're going to be great partners in the work we're already doing. As the reception wound down, Simone took a moment to stand outside and look at the stars. She thought about how dramatically her life had changed since that terrible day when Todd had abandoned her. What had seemed like complete devastation had actually been the beginning of everything wonderful in her life. No regrets? Jonathan asked, joining her outside. None at all, Simone said, leaning against his chest. If Todd hadn't left me at the altar, I never would have met you. I never would have discovered my passion for educational innovation. I never would have learned how much joy there is in helping others. So we owe him a thank you note? Jonathan joked. Maybe a thank you card, Simone laughed. A very small one. A year after their wedding, Simone and Jonathan were hosting Sunday dinner at their home when Helen made an announcement that surprised everyone. I've received some interesting correspondence, she said, pulling an elegant envelope from her purse. It seems that Jonathan has a half-brother he's never met. What? Jonathan asked, nearly dropping his fork. Apparently your father had a relationship before he met your mother and there was a child. This young man has been researching his family history and recently discovered the Pierce connection. Simone reached over and took Jonathan's hand, sensing his mixture of excitement and nervousness. He's requested a meeting, Helen continued. His name is Michael Thompson, he's 31 years old and he works as a social worker in Chicago. Based on his letter, he seems like a wonderful young man who's interested in family connection, not financial gain. What do you think? Jonathan asked Simone. I think family is always worth exploring, she replied. And if he's a social worker, he probably shares our values about helping others. Then let's invite him for dinner next month, Jonathan decided. I'd love to meet my brother. As they continued their meal, Simone reflected on how their story had evolved from a single act of kindness to a life filled with love, purpose, and now the promise of extended family. She had learned to accept generosity gracefully, to trust in love even when it seemed too good to be true, and to believe that hope and kindness could truly change the world. What are you thinking about? Jonathan asked, noticing her contemplative expression. I'm thinking about how every good thing in our life started with someone offering help and someone else accepting it with gratitude, Simone said. Your kindness to me, my willingness to trust you, our decision to work together, even this potential relationship with your brother. It's all built on people saying yes to possibilities. Here's to saying yes to possibilities, Jonathan said, raising his glass. To saying yes, Simone agreed, clinking her glass against his. Outside their window, the garden they had planted together was thriving, and somewhere across the country children were reading books under trees in outdoor classrooms that had been built with love, determination, and the belief that every child deserved to learn in beauty. Their story was far from over, but it was perfect in its imperfection, complete in its ongoing growth, and filled with the kind of love that makes the whole world brighter.